In today's video, I am sharing with you my strategy for moving to Italy so that you can steal it and make your dream come true. Now, you might be thinking, what is she talking about? There's no golden rule or structure for moving to Italy, but you'll be wrong. I actually do think there is a structure that you need to follow if this is what you intend to do. And I did follow some of this structure when I first moved to Italy back in 2018. The rest, well, that's something I learned over time. And so with experience, I have learned the other aspects that perhaps I should have done earlier on to be able to create this strategy so that you don't make the same mistakes that I did. Now, there are a couple of things that I'm going to need you to do. First of all, if you are planning to move to Italy soon and you want to follow this strategy, I'm going to need you to open your mind a little bit, because some of the strategies that I'm going to share with you today do require you to have a bit of an open mind. They are not necessarily your conventional words of advice or steps to take. They could even be considered a little bit woo-woo, but I am living proof sitting here right now in Italy that they work. So take it or leave it. And secondly, I'm going to need you to do quite a bit of work. What I'm presenting to you in today's video is a framework, but of course it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, because we are all unique with unique living situations and responsibilities. And so with this in mind, there may be parts of the framework that are not applicable to you. There may be other parts that I don't talk about that you need to include because it's your lifestyle. So bear in mind, this is not a fixed one-size-fits-all approach. It is still going to require you to put the effort in to be able to tailor it to your own individual needs. So with that said and done, let's jump straight into the strategy, shall we? Step number one, this is the first woo-woo principle I'm going to be talking about today, and it is the power of scripting. Now, scripting is something I absolutely swear by. If you don't know what it is, this is the book that I took it from. I'm going to show it to you here. It's a little bit faded. You can see how much I love this book. Ask and It Is Given by Esther and Jerry Hicks. It is a book all about law of attraction techniques and manifestation. And this is exactly what scripting is. It is a technique designed to kind of hone the power of law of attraction. Now, if you don't know what the process involves, essentially it involves you getting a journal, getting a piece of paper, whatever it may be, and writing down your desires as if you are already have them or living that experience. Now, when it comes to your forthcoming move to Italy, I'm going to need you to write your life in Italy as if you are already living it. So that means you're going to be talking about the home that you live in. You're going to be talking about the job that you have if you need to work here. You're going to be talking about the experiences, how you feel, where you live. You're literally going to write your life as if you're creating a film. It's that. It is like you're writing a film plot. But you're going to write in the present tense, and you are going to write as if you are living that life now. And then once you have completed your script and you've let your imagination run away with you, I want you to read that script religiously every single day. You can read it in the morning, you can read it at night, you can read it at lunchtime. It really doesn't matter when you read it, but you actually read it every day. And you don't read it from a point that you are being objective and you're kind of looking at it with distance. You read it and feel the emotion behind those words. You read it and feel that connection to what you've written. This is really, really important. And then you need to start with the rest of this strategy. And you'll be surprised how much of what you write becomes a reality. This was my experience. I talked about it in the very first video that I filmed on my YouTube channel way back in 2021. I'll link it up here. It's not great for the video or audio, but hey ho, it was my first. But essentially I did that. I got a journal and I wrote down exactly what I wanted my life to be like in Italy. And bear in mind, I was literally just daydreaming at that point. I didn't have a clue that it was actually going to end up becoming my reality. And so much of what I wrote down was actually my life, that when I reread it again about a year or so after I moved here, I was so blown away how much of what I had written I had physically created in my reality. That is the power of scripting, but you do have to believe it. If you have any kind of skepticism, you really are not sure that this is going to be real or going to work for you, then it's not. You've got to have some kind of belief behind it, because it's the kind of magic source to the law of attraction. You've got to believe in it, and then you've got to take the action, and the two of them together, well, it can create great things. So step 2 then, after you have scripted the life that you want to be living here in Italy and you are reading it every single day, you need to now get crystal clear on your why. Now I speak about your why in this video up here, but essentially without a why, the rest of this strategy is going to be very difficult for you to do. You need to get really crystal clear on, first of all, why you want to move to Italy, because if you don't have a solid enough why, as I've said in many other videos before, the minute, literally the absolute second something goes wrong here, you're going to crack. So you need to have a strong why as to why you want to live here in Italy. But then you also need to have a deeper why. Why do you want to live in a particular part of Italy? Why do you want to have the experiences you want to have here in Italy? Why do you want to work here in Italy? Really dig deep with this. Go as deep down as you can with your why, because it's really going to help to ground you, because life here in Italy is complicated and it can be pretty stressful at times, particularly at the very beginning, once you've just moved here. So you do need to make sure that your why is really clear. I would suggest you write it down so that you have a constant reminder of your reason and rationale for moving to Italy, because it's really going to help, as I've said before, with the rest of the strategy to follow. And you can connect your why to your script. Those experiences that you have written about in your script, you can incorporate that into your why just to really unite them and create that strong connection. Okay, your next step is that you're going to want to start learning Italian. I know this is something I didn't do, and it was one of my biggest regrets, which is why I'm putting it right up here at the very beginning, because you do need to learn Italian. You will need to speak Italian when you're living here. Sure, you can get by, but I spoke about it in this video here, just how difficult that kind of life really is. And I'm telling it to you from personal first-hand experience. So you are going to need to learn a level of Italian. Now, I maintain the fact that you do not need to be fluent to move to Italy. I think a lot of people are told you've got to speak fluently before you move here. I don't think that's true. As long as you are able to communicate in everyday situations and you can understand, everyday bureaucracy and things that you need to do, I think you can continue your learning once you're here. In no way, shape or form do I think that you should put off this until you reach a stage of perceived fluency, because that could take years. So I do think at some point you've got to say, okay, I have enough of a knowledge now, I'm going to move, and then continue your learning once you're actually living here and, experiencing Italian all around you, because it does honestly help to a certain degree. So you do need to begin learning Italian, and I always suggest kind of really being honest with yourself. How do you like to learn things? Do you like to learn things visually? Do you like to watch videos? Do you like to look at images? Do you prefer to listen to things, maybe podcasts or TV series? Do you like to read? Do you like the traditional method of study with a book and just reading and memorizing? Do you like to play games? Do you like the gamification aspect of learning? This is what you need to really think about, because this is going to help you to decide the materials that you can use for learning Italian. Sure, you've got apps like Duolingo, but in no way, shape or form would I base my entire Italian learning on that particular app. It can be used in addition to other tools, absolutely. But try to vary your routine. When it comes to learning a language, sometimes it can be pretty mundane and boring, also because not every Italian study book is interesting. Like, it's only recently that I've started to come across some Italian books that have really captured my interest. I'll link them below in the show notes if you want to have a look. But up until that point, a lot of the Italian study books were dry as the desert. Like, literally, there was just nothing that kept me engaged. Not at all like the books for when you want to study English, which are really entertaining and engaging. So you've got to mix up your resources a little bit. Don't just rely on one. Try to create a varied pattern and set a realistic study schedule for learning Italian. So it might be you set 30 minutes aside every single day to focus on your Italian learning, or 15 minutes if that's all you got. It doesn't have to be hours at a time. It's unrealistic and you'll probably never stick to it. So consistency is the key. Little amounts of time compound and add up over the course of a week, and that's what you want to be aiming for. So absolutely start to get organised at this point with learning Italian, utilising resources. YouTube is great as well, and really kind of get your study in order. Now comes to the point where you need to start researching the different areas of Italy. Italy is vast and it is 1,000,001 different countries rolled into one. My experiences here in the south of Italy are extremely different to any other region and part of Italy. And so you really do need to take your time at this particular stage. You need to use all of the different resources that you have available to you, including the internet, including YouTube, including books, blogs, anything that you can find, because essentially you need to compare and contrast and also get a realistic perspective of life in the different parts of Italy that you are interested in. Now, this could be useful for you in terms of writing pros and cons. What do you like the sound of about a particular area? What are you not sure about? And this is going to help you. I would suggest to draw up at least a top 5. You want at least 5 different places that you can kind of dive a bit deeper into, because Italy is vast. It's impossible that you can research every single city and region of Italy and move here this side of 2030. So essentially what you need to do is you need to pick maybe 5 places that really pique your interest, and then you need to do some research around those and dive a bit deeper into them. And then essentially you want to come up with your top 1 or 2, and then that is when you are going to start to think about the next stage of this strategy, which is you are going to start to dive a bit deeper into the expat communities in those areas. Now, you know, if you've been following me for some time, I have a real love-hate relationship with expat communities, particularly online ones, because I think 9 times out of 10 they're just overly negative and unnecessarily so. However, I do credit expat groups for changing my experience, particularly in Salerno. It took about 1.5 years before I really discovered the expat group there, but it absolutely changed my experience for the better. So what you need to do is, rather than begin by looking at the generic Italy expat groups, of which there are many, you want to start narrowing it down and looking at the specific regions. Now, Facebook is obviously a good place to start. It's where a lot of the online expat communities are housed. So have a little look for the specific regions, areas, cities, whatever it may be, that you are interested in living in, and see if there are any expat communities active in those areas. And the good thing about that is, if there is, you can actually start asking questions of people who actually live in those areas, who might be able to also offer you advice, recommendations, guidance. Take everything with a pinch of salt always. Some people have had really terrible experiences here and want to help you by sharing them, but sometimes it has the reverse effect. So just be careful with that. But essentially, it's a point of reference, and you could even end up making friends, just like I did, from those expat groups. So this is definitely something you want to start creating and kind of developing from early on, because those connections are going to really help you once you start living here. Because the biggest thing that I struggled with when I first moved to Italy was feeling lonely and isolated. And so that's why I say it should be one of the earliest things that you start doing, is forging those connections. Italy is a country based on connections. You will realise that the longer you spend here. And so really take your time with this and start to get to know people and form that communication. The next stage means that you're going to have to start researching the different requirements, documents, whatever it may be. This is why I say this is a loose framework that you need to adapt for you to be able to live in Italy on a long-term basis. If you are based outside of Europe, your stay is most likely going to be visa dependent. So you're going to need to look into that. You're going to need to look into the requirements. You can find the information on the Italian government websites, and also even on the government or country websites for where you live as well. For example, in the UK, even now post-Brexit, there actually is a page on the gov.uk website about living in Italy and kind of the requirements that are necessary. So there are ways that you can find out the information from your own government in your country, but also you can find out the necessary information on the Italian government websites as well. You can auto-translate using Google if your Italian isn't up to speed at that point, but you do need to spend a lot of time researching this, because it can be quite complicated moving here with the visa situation. So, you know, you do need to make sure that you meet the requirements. Often it's financial dependent, so you really do have to kind of take your time with this and do your research and see what category you could move here under. And this really depends whether you're retiring or you're planning to move here to work, for example. The next stage means that you're going to have to come to Italy. I know, it's a hard life, isn't it? But there's only so much that you can really do in your own country when it comes to wanting to move to Italy. You need to spend some time here, because if your original time was just spent on holiday in Italy and that was when you fell in love with it, which was exactly what happened with me, that's only one side of Italy that you've seen. And you do need to kind of take off those rose-tinted glasses and see Italy for what it is. on a day-to-day basis. So there are a couple of different things that you can do depending on your budget and really your availability, to be honest. If you are planning to retire here and you don't have any kind of restrictions on time and maybe no restrictions on money, then I recommend coming here for an extended period of time, 2 or 3 weeks, whatever period you can physically manage. Booking an Airbnb, and this is important because you're not going to come here as a tourist and stay in a hotel. You're going to try to create an experience that feels as authentic as possible. So if you've got your own front door to shut and you've got to make your own cup of tea in the morning and make your bed and look after the house, it's going to start to feel a bit more like real life, right? This is important. So you're going to book an Airbnb and you're going to spend some time in the area that you're in. You're not sightseeing, you're not going around looking at all the attractions. You are literally going to walk around that town and imagine you live there. So you're going to be looking at services. What services are available where I live? Is there public transport any good? Buses generally are not very good in Italy, especially here in the south, but you know, you need to suss out all of the options. Like, what is the area like? Is it quiet? Is it noisy? Could I see myself living here? Like, these are all of the things that you get from just walking around a place and judging for yourself the vibe and the feel of an area and neighborhood. And so that's what I would recommend if you don't have any kind of restrictions on time or money. If, however, you're a bit more on a budget, just like I was back in 2018, you could do something a little bit different. You could actually do a language exchange. Now, I used a website called workaway.com, and essentially you do pay a fee to be a member on this site for the year, but I promise you what you pay as a fee there is so much cheaper than if you were to book an Airbnb for 3 weeks or 2 weeks, however long you plan to stay. So you pay this fee and essentially you have different options across many other countries around the world, not just Italy, of exchange opportunities. So for example, I came to Salerno and that's how I discovered Salerno, because I didn't even know it existed up until that point. My holiday in 2017 had purely been near Sorrento, so I didn't even really know about Salerno at that point. But essentially, this is why it helps for you to know where in Italy you want to be, because you can see if there are any exchange opportunities close to the area that you are interested in. Now, what normally happens with these exchange opportunities is that you go and you do some work for the people. Maybe you are teaching them a language, which is what I did. Maybe you are helping at a B&B, or you are working on some land. It really depends. There are lots of different opportunities there. Maybe you're teaching at a school. Could be loads of different opportunities that you do. But essentially, what normally happens is that it is like a volunteer position, but you are given free accommodation, usually free food, and you actually are often given time to explore the local area as well. So for me and my experience in Salerno, I stayed with an Italian family for 4 weeks. I didn't pay anything at all. My experience was in teaching English, but I was actually shown the area and I got to know Salerno on a much deeper level through the eyes of people who live there. So it proved to me the most valuable experience completely. So go and check that website out if you're on a bit more of a budget and you don't have the possibility to book an Airbnb for an extended period of time. That could be a secondary option for you to do, but it's really important that you spend some time in the areas that you like. I cannot stress this enough, because unfortunately, if you are just doing everything online, you really don't understand what it's like to live here, and I don't want you to make a decision that you're going to regret. Okay, so you've had your time in Italy. You are now really a lot more certain on where you want to go. You've spent some time in the areas you like. You've made a decision. Now you've got to start thinking about your budget. Now, this is so unique and so personal. I cannot even begin to blanket an answer with what you need to do here, but essentially you've got to think about your own individual requirements, your spending habits, the things that you need to pay for on a regular basis, and also whether or not you're going to need to find a job here. As I said before, if you're retiring here, this isn't so much a situation for you, but if you plan to move here to work here, then you've got to start thinking about the kind of money you need to be earning to be able to finance your life here in Italy. And if you're retired, you've got to start thinking about the amount of money you have available through pensions or whatever other money you have saved that is going to support your life here. And that will need to be documented at some point during the process of actually proving your right to live here as well on a long-term basis, especially if you are outside of the EU. So these are really important factors. And if you are here to find work, I'm going to list some companies below in the show notes that you can have a look at online. You may have to take a job teaching. I'm going to put it out there because if your Italian isn't fantastic, the range of English speaking jobs especially is very, very limited. So you may have to do a bit of teaching, which, you know, for me, I've been teaching English here for 6 years and it's actually been the greatest teacher for me, funny enough, because I've learned so much about the culture, about people, about myself. So, you know, it could be a great way for you to integrate yourself into the community because English teachers are always in demand here. But again, it really depends because visas, it's complicated. There are kind of like restrictions as to people who can work here from outside of Europe unless there's a specific skill set that can't be found in Europe. And then there's certain numbers of jobs available every year. It's just complicated, but do your homework, research it. Where there's a will, there's a way. I don't want to give up and be like, it's too difficult because I made it happen. And yes, I had pre-Brexit on my side, but I still made it happen. And trust me, there were people telling me left, right and centre it wouldn't be possible. So where there's a will, there's a way. Do your research, have a look, see what jobs you could do. Maybe you do remote working and you're working online. Just do your research into jobs. Always make sure though that they're going to meet the requirements of any long-term visas that you might need here in Italy if that is your situation. So you've always got to be mindful of that. And if you do need to work here, please make sure that you educate yourself on the working environment here in Italy, especially here in the south of Italy, because it is 99.9% likely to be extremely different to what you're used to. So don't be like me and just kind of learn about it firsthand in the moment. Come here a little bit prepared, and then you don't have that kind of culture shock of differences that you're going to definitely encounter. So once you've started looking at jobs, you're kind of working out your budget, this is where you're going to be thinking about your housing situation. Now, this really depends on whether you plan to buy or rent here in Italy, but either way, you need to be here in Italy for some point during this process. Especially if you're buying a property, I know there are some companies that manage the whole process for people who live in other countries, but I think it's a risk, and I always think it's a risk because you're buying somewhere, you need to be there, you need to feel the property, you need to touch it, you need to oversee the process. I just think you need to be here basically for any kind of matters relating to your home, and especially for renting as well. You've got to be here, you've got to make sure you're happy with the home, with the environment, with the contract, with all of the legalities that come into play whether you're buying or renting a home. Now again, I'll put some links in the show notes below of some websites that you can refer to start to get an idea of prices, because of course at this point you need to have a few things in order before you can even start thinking about buying or renting a home. You're going to need, and this stems way back to one of the earlier stages, you're going to need a codice fiscale. This is like your tax code. This is the key that unlocks everything in Italy. Without it, you cannot open a bank account, you cannot even take out a phone SIM. So for this, you need to have this. I know pre-Brexit that it was possible to apply for this remotely from the UK, pre-Brexit. But I personally got it in presence at the tax office in Salerno, and trust me, it was one of the fastest pieces of paperwork that I've ever had issued. People here in Italy are not silly, right? But yes, this is it. So you need to get your tax code. This ties in when you're researching your documents, this will be flagged. But essentially, before you can even start looking into any of these aspects, you're going to need to have that piece of paper, because if you find something you like, you're blocked until you are registered in the system and can really push ahead with that, to be honest. Now the next stage is that you're going to need to start to think about like your bank accounts, for example. Are you going to keep a bank account in your country? Can you still keep a bank account active in your country? I do recommend that perhaps you're going to need to have a bank account here in Italy. It will make your life a lot easier, and you can get non-resident bank accounts that you can begin to open, but I recommend trying to get a residence bank account if you plan to live here, because generally speaking the rates are better. So you need to do your research with that. I'm not able to give any kind of financial advice, but do your research. There are plenty of well-known banks here in Italy, so do your research as to the one that could be best for you and your own personal circumstances as well. And the final stage of this really is that I really want you to think about how you want your life to be here in Italy. I really want you to sit with this, because it's not enough just to focus on the individual steps of this strategy, because once you have set your life up here, life's going to be difficult, like if you don't have anything to fill your void with. So you need to really think about what you want to experience here. Do you want to travel? Do you want to join social groups? Do you want to learn something? What do you want to do with your days? Really think about the way that you want to live your life here, because that's something that a lot of people don't pay enough attention to. And once life kind of kicks into gear and everything starts to feel like normality, it can be really difficult for people to adjust to the fact that they have all of this time and they don't really know what to do with themselves. That was me. So really and truly, be ahead of the game. Start to think about the things that you want to do once you actually start living here, and that's going to help you to also think about the various other aspects of your life, including where you're going to base yourself. So these are the steps that I would really suggest following to kickstart the process of moving to Italy. As I've said before, it's a flexible framework. So for example, if you have a family, you're also going to need to be thinking about education. You need to be researching schools and educational establishments here in Italy. There's plenty of different factors you're going to need to think about. If you have a disability and you want to move here, you're going to need to be thinking about where you base yourself. Are you going to be easily able to move around? There are just too many variables for me to do one video that could work for everyone. So use this as a loose framework and attach the extra parts in where necessary that are applicable to you and your life. But I hope this video has helped. Watch this video next if you want to dive a bit deeper into the reasons why people don't ever make it to Italy, and most importantly, what you can do about it. I will see you in the next video.